EM Weekly is starting right now.
And the basic principle is we're going to connect to what people already have in their hands and not make them buy other types of radios and so on and so forth.
Hi, and welcome to EM Weekly. This is your host, Todd DeVoe. This episode, we're going to be talking about interoperability of communications and with Basecamp Connect. One of the reasons why I wanted to have Basecamp to talk about communications is because whenever we do a drill or an actual event, when we do our after action reports, the biggest thing that always comes up is communications. So I said, okay, I need to search out somebody who has a quality product, who could talk about emergency communications in the sense of interoperability, an easy solution. And I found these guys. It's Basecamp Connect. And so it was really cool to be able to talk to Frank about their product and what it does and how it helps. And so if I can use it, if this is something that I could take a look at, figure out pretty easily, anybody could do it, because I am definitely not a techno guy. So I hope that you guys can get something out of this. Check out their website and their product. Also, I'd like you guys, if you guys could please share this podcast and all the other ones with your friends and colleagues. It's growing this community. This is your community, and I want you guys to understand that I'm here for you guys. So we're going to be rolling out a new feature called Ask Todd, and basically you go to our website, www.emweekly.com, and you can just go ahead and submit your question there. If I don't know the answer, we'll find somebody who does. We'll get the question answered in these coming up podcasts. And so it's going to be the Ask Todd section of the EM Weekly podcast. So I'm pretty stoked about that. We've had a few people that have been asking questions, and I've been looking for solutions for you guys, and I don't mind doing it. And I love learning just as much as you guys do. And so that's a really cool feature I think that we're going to be throwing out there. So if you guys have any suggestions, any questions, please go to the EM Weekly website and ask Todd any question that you can think of emergency management related, and we'll find answers for you. That being said, the holidays are coming up, and we're going to be doing a featured episode here on products and books and whatnot that I would love to have under my Christmas tree. And so I did a little poll on the EM Weekly group on Facebook of what you'd like to see underneath your Christmas tree as an emergency manager, or the Hanukkah bush, or the Festivus pole, or whatever you guys celebrate, Kwanzaa, what you'd like to have for a holiday gift, or any gift for that matter, if you don't partake in anything as an emergency manager. And so we'll be doing that episode here coming up shortly, and I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and I hope you guys do too. Well, let's not wait any longer, and let's get into Basecamp Connect. Hey guys, how you doing? And thank you so much for coming and listening to EM Weekly. And today I have from Basecamp Connect, which is a really cool product that I want to kind of highlight. And I have Frank Robineau here with me. He's going to talk about his company, what they do, and how their solutions makes communication so much easier in the disaster setting. So Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Frank, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then I'd like to hear about your company and how you got started and what exactly you guys are doing now for communications in emergency settings.
Yeah, so I am VP of Sales for the company. I've been hired about 2 years ago. Basecamp is a Canadian company based out of Quebec City on the South Shore of Quebec City. The company has been operating about 5 years, mostly with the Canadian National Defence on the more of the public safety side. As you know, there's the Canadian Reserve is deployed during emergencies and natural catastrophes. I guess the most common one that we see is the floods in Manitoba. So they were looking for an alternative solution to what they had that was quick, that they could deploy, plug in public safety together with them, and basically go there, have a temporary infrastructure, and be there to help out the local agency. So we started to work with them about 5 years ago, and naturally that trickled down to public safety. And now we sell throughout Canada, the U.S., and a little bit in Europe. and just recently in Southeast Asia, our systems to public safety, sheriffs, police, and fire departments, emergency management, and also to everything that is non-military related or military, but non-related to traditional military operations. What I mean by that is National Guard, National Guard, I guess, is what we would call it in basically every country.
Your product, how exactly does it work?
Right. So there's various ways to explain it, but basically it's kind of from what the customers are telling us, the Basecamp is kind of a magic box in the sense that it's a roller case that we deploy basically anywhere. And that rapid deploy kit interconnects agencies together using their own radios, and also it provides telephone and internet service in 5 minutes flat without any training, without having IT infrastructure being around. It does all that automatically and dramatically reduces the time of deployment when there's an emergency, and greatly accelerates the interoperability, which is, I guess a big word in emergency management nowadays. So unlike any other system that you're going to see out there, the Basecamp actually works with all existing technologies. We can connect to anything that's out there in terms of telephone networks instead of legacy systems, instead of future systems coming along, like I'm thinking about 5G technologies that will be, that's basically at our doorstep, and that's going to be available maybe in 2-3 years from now. The Basecamp already incorporates all that in a very simple platform, and really it eliminates complex training, and it auto manages networks. So if you're in an emergency based on communications with a cell carrier, and that carrier falls down, the towers are not available, or in events that we saw recently, like Hurricane Harvey, and a little bit further away, Katrina, Sandy, and things like that. The system will automatically reconnect to available networks, from cell towers to T1 lines to legacy systems, all the way to satellite dishes.
Obviously, earthquakes are one of the issues that we talked about, and we had a small little earthquake one time, and we lost communication because the cell phones and landlines are all overwhelmed with people calling up to see if they felt that earthquake. So I can see where this comes into play. Yeah,
and this is a little bit, what you just mentioned. That's important. A lot of LTE networks or non-LTE networks get clogged or become unavailable when there's, and it doesn't need to be a catastrophe. It could be a large event. If you're in California and you go in any city that has an NFL football team, the day of the event, if you look at the network and the way that it's being used, it's almost an overcapacity. So it's very difficult if something happens during an event like that to actually have public safety go through traditional networks, even though we're LTE networks. So this is a little bit one of the reasons why the LTE private networks, we're starting to hear about them. Initiatives like FirstNet, which the governor of Texas just said, I think it was last week, that they're going to give the go to the project and have FirstNet available in Texas.
One of the things I noticed about your product is that, for anybody listening, there's no derogatory means by this, but you fireproof it or you cop-proof it, which means that anybody could take it, open it, and start using it, and you don't have to worry about being an IT guy. That design is pretty instrumental, I guess, in what you guys are doing. Have you found that it's that easy? I mean, I know you said it earlier that it's pretty easy, but have you found that it's that easy to deploy that anybody can grab that box and make it work?
Oh, yeah. This is what got me into the industry, because, the positions I had before in previous companies, I thought I'd never go in a smaller company type scenario. And when I started to do my research, when we started to talk together, and I started to do my research on what's the other solutions out there, what do you need to make them work? And it always seems like there is heavy IT involvement. At the time, of deployment. So when you really need infrastructure to be there quickly, that's where you need to have IT involvement. And basically because everything that I've seen before are using IP switches, gateways, all words that for a neophyte, you need to have IT knowledge to actually make them run and troubleshoot them. So the approach that Basecamp has is very simple, is automating all of this IT configurations prior to the deployment and having failover and safety nets all over, so that if one fails, it automatically will defer to the next and to the next and to the next. So you could have, many, we talked about networks before. So if I take this example again, if we have 6 different networks preset within the unit, chances are one of the 6 will be available. So if it goes on the first one and then it becomes unavailable and the system defers to number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, one of them is going to be made available, and ultimately that one will be a satellite dish, because that's usually what we see as being deployed when there's a major emergency. So we take care of all the complex automation. And when I mean we, it's Basecamp with the customer. So we do involve the IT department, sometimes very heavily, when it's configuration time of the unit, or reconfiguring the unit, or training them on how to do it themselves. But the basic principle remains the same. Once you deploy the unit, anybody can, basically anybody with a brain can plug it in to any type of power network, whether it be a traditional network or what we call dirty power, like a generator. And once you could do that and switch it on, you wait 5 minutes and you have your phone system, you have your radio interoperability module, you have your internet connection. And as a user, you don't need to know if it's on AT&T or Verizon or a satellite dish. If it works, and that's all you need.
One box that you have, how many systems can be hooked up into that one box?
Right. Well, we have 2 different versions of the Basecamp. We have the smaller one that we call the Basecamp Lite. Is basically a Pelican case that you could run, say, between 5 and 10 people around the unit. So 5 or 10 people on the telephone system and on the internet connection. But in terms of radio networks, we patch in 2 different radio networks together. And that is from P25 to Tetra, encrypted, non-encrypted, analog, digital, basically every radio that is out there. And I would say 99%, just to be sure. The Basecamp, which is the standard Basecamp and the first product that we came out with a while ago, that one is more scalable. So you can have up to 45 people working around the unit with the telephone system and the internet connectivity, and the radio networks. You can have either 5 different networks connected together or 10 different networks. Usually, by what we see with customers, the most common is 5 radio networks, because as an emergency manager, you don't want to manage 10 different networks. That just becomes too much when there's an emergency. And chances are 5 is pretty much, I would say, the most common that people will use. There's not, many. I'd say many events that will happen that you will need to have 10 different agencies talking at the same time on radios that you need to interoperate. So between 5 and 45, and depending on which unit the customer chooses.
You could throw this box on a fire truck or in the back of a police command vehicle and deploy it pretty quickly. How fast can it get up and running once you pull the box out and you put the on button?
And you're right, you could plug it into a supervisor vehicle. Most of the even smaller SUVs that we see on the market have power outlets for 150 watts more. Our unit necessitates about 25 watts of running power to operate, so it's very, very minimal. So you could take basically any type of vehicle with a power outlet, 120 or 110 volt power outlet, plug it in, and within 5 minutes you will be connected to networks. So it's very, very quick.
We have large-scale fires out in the West, and we have a bunch of different companies coming in, working together. When I say companies, like fire departments and whatnot, coming in to work together, and it is one of the things that we would go to is the old Bendix King radios, so everybody's on the same communication. And those things are they're old and the old technology, and they work for what they are, but they're not great. So this here could replace that, and everybody can use their normal radio. Is that the concept behind it?
Well, no, actually, and that's a valid point. The Basecamp itself is agnostic to technologies used and connected to it, and that is true for connectivity with cell networks, satellites, anything you're going to plug into the WAN port, for example. It's also true for the radios, which is an advantage because it will work with the Bendix King. And let's take an example, I think, to illustrate this. The Bendix King radios are still used and highly used with search and rescue teams. At least they are in Canada. Most of the teams that are using the Basecamp from Toronto and Vancouver and other cities do have the Bendix Kings. But when they deploy, and they have the international mandate, so they're kind of like the FEMA teams in the U.S. When they deploy internationally, like what happened in Ecuador with earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, and things like that, they will tie in with the local authorities that will probably not be on Bendix King. So they could be on Motorola, Kenwood, whatever radios that they have down there. The idea with the Basecamp is that you will use your Bendix King radios because you need to operate in simplex mode, for example, while you are abroad, because you're just, there's no tower that's near you, and you're not doing your work in a city environment. And you will connect your radios and make a common channel with the public safety radios where you are going out to help out. So this necessitates to have a system that's flexible enough and that allows you to have different type of radios, whether they are analog or digital or trunked or conventional, or HF radios or Petra radios or whatever you have there. It allows you to have all those communicate with each other, again, in a very simple way. And it's an ad hoc network. So you open the box, you plug those radios into the box, you make a connection between them. And once the event or the scenario that you're dealing with doesn't necessitate to have a common channel, you just unplug the radios and you're back to where you were. So if you look at alternatives, they are either infrastructure alternatives, which are expensive, which are complex, and are usually capital expenditure. They're very big projects. And then everything else that we saw was either incomplete or offers a partial solution. You could have an ad hoc Wi-Fi network, but that's not going to tie you into different radios, right? Or you could have a radio interrupt module that's a standalone device, but that will not help you have a phone system while you are out in the field. And not everybody works on radios. So when you're talking about emergency and you have NGOs coming in, they might be using their own personal cell phones. So, you need to palliate that. So with everything that we looked at, it was very important for us to have a unit that was agnostic to the radio technology so that we could plug everything in, to the satellite technology so that we could, again, plug everything in depending on what the customers had. And the basic principle is we're going to connect to what people already have in their hands and not make them buy other types of radios and so on and so forth, so that we can keep a decent price and help them by using their own equipment.
We've run into that problem a couple times, and I know we can trunk other people in. A good example of that was there was an event in Orange County where police officers from LA County came in to assist, and it took a little bit for them to be able to get up to our communications level because of trunking systems. We're encrypted 800 megahertz. They're non-encrypted, whatever they're using in LA County, and so it made it a little bit difficult for us to talk to each other for a little bit. And now something like what you were talking about would really help out a lot, especially if it could be done in the field level instead of having to have it go back to dispatch and having IT and dispatch try to figure out what's going on.
If you look at things that are going on with the counties like Riverside and San Bernardino, they will have from time to time, collaborative work. Let's put it that way. It's not something that they're going to do on a day-to-day basis. It's not something that's regularly done. However, they will need to have at one point some interoperability. But it doesn't make sense for them to do it at the infrastructure level and to spend, $250,000 for that single event that they're going to need it. So this is why something that is very flexible, a solution like the Basecamp would help them when they have a cross-border communication need to have an ad hoc network and then to unplug everyone once they go back to their normal work.
What about bringing in other disciplines? So, for instance, fire, although you're seeing fire go to 800 megahertz encrypted as well, but say like EMS, where they're on a whole complete different radio system as far as, I think they're just basically a two-way radio that they have. I don't believe any of it's encrypted, and I don't think it's at the same level as the county stuff. These are private ambulance companies like American Medical Response, for instance, that actually responded to the active shooter that occurred today, or yesterday, I should say, in Las Vegas. How are they communicating with each other? Does this system fix that issue as well? The answer to that question and more when we get back from our break.
Emergencies happen, whether they're related to medical emergencies, threats of physical violence, weather-related, or other. One of the most difficult things during an emergency is to find help and quickly and efficiently communicate with all parties, regardless of whether you're an administrator, law enforcement, or the end user. With Titan HST, we help to store time by creating high-tech yet simple-to-use mobile-based applications that connect you with the people who can help you. At Titan HST, we believe in the power of people.
Hi, this is Todd DeVoe from EM Weekly. If your company is in the emergency management and response space, EM Weekly is a place for you to advertise. Each week, we bring in experts in emergency management, response, and leadership from around the world, and they're here to share their best practices. Our listeners are eager to learn about new products and ideas, so this is the space for you. For more information, please contact Brian at brian@emweekly.com. Say like EMS, where they're on a whole complete different radio system as far as, I think they're just basically a two-way radio that they have. I don't believe any of it's encrypted, and I don't think it's at the same level as the county stuff. These are private ambulance companies like American Medical Response, for instance, that actually responded to the active shooter that occurred today, or yesterday, I should say, in Las Vegas. How are they communicating with each other? Does this system fix that issue as well?
It can, yes. Although most of the work that we do and most of the demands are coming from either police departments, sheriff departments, search and rescue, and fire, which of course search and rescue is part of normally. We do have ambulance services who also want to be tied in. Normally, you would have, the police and sheriff departments and the fire departments call in EMS. So we don't see them as much, but they could be as well working with our system. Especially if you're looking at large events, and you mentioned Vegas, what just happened there. Just the Vegas department will not be enough for the needs that they had that day. So if you have, 5, 6, 7 different companies coming in from different counties to help out, it will still help them out by using the Basecamp and having exactly the same type of features and the same type of features that you will find with the ones that are used by police and fire.
Yeah, I mean, that becomes critical. I mean, let's talk about Vegas for a minute. And, there's not enough data right now to see what the lessons learned are. But, 500 and some odd transported. There was a lot more than just the Vegas Metro Fire Department, transporting people. And, so that is key. And I don't know how far away they're calling rigs in from. But my experience with EMS is, you're talking, if you're putting 3 people in per rig, I mean, how many rigs do you need at that point if you do the math really quick? You know what I mean? So there's going to be definitely, and then the ReadyNet specific that we have here in California, where they'll tell us what hospitals to go to. I'm not sure how they work in Vegas, but I'm sure there had to have been some coordination of letting them know what hospitals, and so bringing the hospital communication on board would be key as well. There's a huge need for your system. That's really
Yes, and one thing that's important with the, as far as the hospitals are concerned, what they are looking at when they look at the Basecamp, they're looking at business continuity. So if their main system goes down, what do they do? It's a little bit like what an EOC replacement would do. If they need to move the EOC to a different location for whatever reason, earthquake can be a good one, then where do we go, what do we do, and what's our capacity? And the Basecamp helps on a temporary basis to relocate and have almost the same capacity that they would have normally. The same goes for the hospitals. If we look at events like Katrina, they were basically blocked out from the rest of the world. Having a unit like a Basecamp there with a satellite dish would have allowed them to coordinate their work a lot quicker with the authorities. We always need to keep in mind that it's not only the hospitals, the type of work that they are doing with people coming in, but sometimes there's a need for evacuation, and the need for evacuation is usually happening when there's a failure of all systems, communications and other, and they need to evacuate to make sure that they keep people safe. So that is also a need that is considered when they're looking at a business continuity perspective.
Look at Moore, Oklahoma, where the entire hospital for that city was gone. I mean, literally, it was in pieces, So, and then also down in Florida, when they evacuated that hospital just during Irma, So I do see again another piece for that. The biggest frustration I've ever had when I've ran calls is that communication piece of trying to get a hold of who you need to get a hold of, either to give the information or to get an ETA, and sometimes the systems fail, and that's on a responder frustration is there. I can just imagine what it is for the frustration for the hospitals, not knowing how many people are coming in and what the conditions of the patients are, so that they could be prepared for them on a mass casualty type situation if the communication goes down. What's the future look for you guys as far as new technology coming out? I mean, how are you guys expanding, and what's your market reach?
Well, of course, we keep a close eye on everything that's being put out. We've talked about FirstNet. As I said before, the governor of Texas, after the recent events, said that they're going to go ahead and fund the necessary resources to have FirstNet available. The Basecamp is ready for FirstNet. So even if somebody buys it now and goes on FirstNet in 2, 3, 4 years from now, they will be able to operate their Basecamp with FirstNet. So, and that's something that's pretty important. We're looking at all sorts of technologies. We go to the IWC show every year to see what else is out there and what are the developments. We pair up with companies, even with radio companies that have their radio interoperability modules to integrate that within our system. So we are looking, the basic idea with the Basecamp is agnostic to technology again. So we're trying very hard to make sure that as we go down the road, if there's switches in technology, it is not difficult for our customers to switch to that without replacing everything from the Basecamp. And one of the best example, I think, is 5G or next gen LTE, or whatever they're going to call it. Should they switch to next generation LTE, it will be very simple for our customers to maybe change 1 or 2 units within the Basecamp and keep on operating the system, without the need of changing everything.
Well, that's really cool too.
Yeah, in terms of networks, that applies to, where we're going in the future. Search and rescue, by the nature of their work, is very important for us. Whether they be FEMA teams or Type 2 teams or Type 3 teams, we are in close contact with these people to let them know that we exist, that we do. As I said again, we're a Canadian company. We have basically all of the search and rescue teams in Canada, the large Type 1 search and rescue teams, are using the Basecamp already. So it's already, been proven in the field. We also reach out to fire, police, and sheriff departments throughout the states. And of course, we need to prioritize. And of course, California is one of our priorities, where, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of hazards. And there's a lot of needs. So we basically cover California all the way to Florida and right up to the East Coast is where we concentrate our efforts, let's say, for the coming year. And then we also have agreements, of course, with people who work in the Midwest and on the Northeast and the Northwest. And we sell through either partnerships or direct there too. But we definitely concentrate on some niche markets where the FEMA teams are located, for example, and that will drive our business for the next year or so. And then if we talk, have the same conversation maybe in 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to have, expansion in Europe. We're going to have expansion in Southeast Asia and other countries that don't have the same infrastructure that we have, that don't have the same initiatives that we have, like FirstNet, but that have crying needs for something that works in the field. So we are looking at that very closely to develop in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I've been in parts of the world where if you don't have a satellite phone, you're not going to get any connection. So something like what you're doing with the Basecamp is really important. Okay, so if somebody wanted to get a hold of you guys and to have a demo or see what you guys do, how could they find you?
So it's very simple. Basecampconnect.com is our website. We want to put as much information in the hands of people so that they can decide for themselves if they want to pursue it or not. So there's a lot of videos that are on the website. There's explanations on what the system does, what's the type of capacity. And if they are interested, they can either click on one of the buttons that will ask them, I want to know more, please contact me. I want to schedule a live demo to understand better how it works. Or I seem to understand what this is doing. I want a quote. So you could do all three: request a quote, request a demo online, or request us to call you to have more information directly from the website. There's also my coordinates that are out there. Email, very simple. It's francis@basecampconnect.com. And the phone number is there too. It's a toll-free number, 855-900-3539. And my extension is 2004. So any way that people want to reach us, it's pretty simple to do that, and we usually respond within the hour.
That's great. For those of you guys that don't have a pencil in your hand, or if you're driving on the road, all that information will be down in the show notes. So don't fret, you can still get that information. All right, Frank, toughest question of the day. You ready for it?
I think so.
Okay. What book would you recommend to somebody who is in this field?
Toughest question of the day, definitely. Well, if it's in regards to the, products and guidelines and what to do, and I don't want to necessarily sell what we're doing here, but we have ebooks that are more general than just product specific on what to think of when you buy a mobile command vehicle, for example. And of course, communications are included in there. I'd have to say that it's not a book, but one of the people that I really like to follow on LinkedIn is Craig Fugate. And Craig Fugate is an ex-FEMA director. He's very active on LinkedIn, posts a lot of stuff in there. And some of them are do's and don'ts, and why things are working or not. And it's not necessarily technology. You're going to see sometimes that it's going to be procedures, and it can also be about policies. He wrote a recent article on how to mitigate floods in areas that, I'd say urban areas have kind of stepped over, natural flood-prone areas, but that if nature itself repairs much quicker than we do if it overfloods homes. So interesting articles on how to rethink sometimes urban development, all the way to what to do to avoid losing your goods when a hurricane hits, and then of course it goes all the way to policies and all that stuff. So very interesting person to follow.
All right, Frank. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we let you go?
Well, I think we've covered a lot in the short 20, 25, 30 minutes that we talked. I'd say that usually our system and what we just talked about today spurs a lot of questions. Is this thing going to work with what I have? Does it work in the area that I have? What does it cost? So on and so forth. So I would encourage people to just reach out and ask whatever questions they have, and we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Awesome. Well, sir, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see your product out there in the field doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Thank you for having me on the air. Really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing back from you and everybody who listens to the podcast.